This chart reading is for Saturday, August 31st, 2002 at 12:30 p.m. in Panama City, Panama. And so you commented on my Virgo Sun Gemini Moon video asking specifically about, what if you have Sagittarius rising? What if you have Pluto in the first house? And then I just said, email me your information. I'll just give you a personal reading. So here we are. So I'm just going to kind of wing this. I have glanced at the chart, but I haven't gotten super into it. I can already see some themes for sure. And I'm just going to kind of just get into it and say what I see as I see it. So first of all, I'll start off with what you asked. You asked about Sagittarius rising, Pluto in the first house. So because you have Virgo Sun and Gemini Moon, I'm not going to get into all of that. Like I described that in a short but pretty concise video, which obviously you've already seen, and so I'm not going to reiterate all of that. But Sagittarius rising continues some of the themes that are already present in Virgo and Gemini, and specifically Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon. So for instance, so you have triple mutable. You have Sun, Moon, Rising, all in mutable signs, which means that they correlate to the ending of seasons. They're all open-minded and adaptable. They're all about learning. All the mutable signs are about learning, but even your big three, Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius in particular. And whenever there's a mutable sign in a chart, it kind of because of the malleable nature of the mutable signs, and the wide range of characteristics in each one. The way I see it is that a mutable placement will sort of adapt to whatever's going on in the rest of the chart. So for instance, with Sagittarius rising, if you had a very outgoing fiery chart, Sagittarius rising could reinforce the fiery themes. But your chart is more mutable, like I just said. So, again, Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon, both mutable, and you've got Sagittarius rising. So the combination of those three will make a person who's very adaptable, very much about learning, wants to learn. You're probably very curious. And again, those are kind of themes that are already present in Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon, but that are reinforced with Sagittarius rising. A lot of your purpose and your mission and your identity are all in your rising. And so since yours is Sagittarius, you came here to learn, especially with a Virgo Sun as well. Virgo is here partially to service others, but also to learn. And so in your chart, I see a soul who came to Earth to learn. You desperately want to learn. You want to learn like all kinds of different information. You maybe probably want to associate with many different kinds of people, because again, it's not just about learning information, although it is that as well. But Sagittarius rising, where Virgo and Gemini are more about maybe book smarts or learning, ideas and stuff like that, Sagittarius likes all that too, but it also wants to have real physical experiences and like hands-on learning. So you want to learn all kinds of information, whether it's theoretical or it's like a hands-on experience that you're learning through an experience. You just want a whole wide variety, not just want, but you need to have a enriched life. And I guess that sounds vague. That might apply to everyone, but for you specifically, you'll probably have a really interesting life story that will be filled with all these different chapters and subchapters, because you need adventure, you need lots of stimulation, you need lots of information. And just with that mutable emphasis, there's a wide range to your personality and a focus on learning. Okay, secondly, you asked about Pluto in the first house, and as you can see here, you definitely do have Pluto in the first house. Specifically, by the way, I want to mention I use equal houses, so this might look slightly different than you're born in the tropical latitude, so it doesn't really make much of a difference, but just thought I'd mention that. But for your chart, yes, you do have Pluto in the first house. Not only that, but it's almost conjunct. I mean, some astrologers would call that conjunct with the rising. It's about 4 degrees away, so I mean, it's close enough to be sort of conjunct, depending on what orb you're using. So any planet in the first house definitely characterizes your personality, as you may or may not know. Especially being that close to the rising, I would say the energies of Pluto definitely are part of your core identity. So what does that mean? So I've known people with Pluto in the first house or Pluto conjunct the rising, and I think it's more subtle than we'd expect maybe. Pluto has a reputation of being super dramatic and bold and, sexual. And it can be all those things. It definitely can. It has that potential for sure. But Pluto is the farthest planet from the sun that we're aware of, and it's small and dark and cold and slow. So I think its energies they can be very subtle, or they can take a long time to grow or to activate, I guess. And with every person I've known with Pluto in the first or Pluto conjunct the rising, there's something obscure about them which is hard to articulate. And I think Pluto in the first or Pluto conjunct the rising, or Pluto in general, by its very nature, is difficult to pin down or difficult to define. There'd be something about you that's almost unreachable. There'd be a sort of magnetism, but the reason why it's magnetic, or why your personality would be magnetic, is because there's part of you that people can sense, but it's like it's off limits, or they can sense it, but they can't totally. It's not totally tangible. There's part of you that's, I don't know how to describe it, but there's this almost like mysteriousness or almost aloofness. It's not really aloofness though. You'd be very present in the moment and accessible to some extent, but people can sense that there's part of you that's inaccessible, and that actually draws people in, if that makes sense. Those are my thoughts about Pluto being right there. Also, it could just add to, like, with all the mutable influence, transformation might be a huge part of your life. So you're always growing and learning and changing. And so Pluto kind of reinforces that theme, where you will have major transformations through your life. So, from start to finish, it almost might be like multiple lifetimes within this one lifetime. You might have very different personalities just within yourself, just, from in these different chapters of your life. That's how I would see it. And again, that's because not only are you very mutable, you have Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini, which are all about change and, constantly changing and learning and growing, but also Pluto is all about huge transformation. So, there's very much an element of change in your life for sure. Okay. And then, so aside from that, so I'm noticing a few different things. Okay, your moon is almost conjunct your descendant, and it's also almost conjunct your north node, right here. And so that there's a lot of meaning just within that. So and by definition, that means you have your south node right in between your rising and your Pluto. Your south node's at 13 degrees Sagittarius. So that's having your south node there. It strengthens the themes there. So you would actually very much relate to Sagittarius, probably because you have not only your rising but also your south node there. So you would be very much used to going out in the world and like learning new experiences, being curious and adventurous, like a Sagittarius would. And maybe your parents traveled a lot when you were a kid. That would be very common. Or maybe you're just used to going to different places, having new experiences, stuff like that. And it's something that you're good at. You're just naturally, that might be the status quo for you. You're just naturally oriented that way, maybe brought up that way. Again, just having traveling far places, meeting new people, stuff like that. It's something that you're very good at, but there's some kind of, since your south node is there's some kind of downfall there where, let me see. So south node, Sagittarius, north node, Gemini. It's almost like you need to tone it down a little bit, and it's something that you'll figure out as you mature and get older. But personally, mine's the opposite. So I'm using my own to sort of understand it. I have south node, Gemini, north node, and Sagittarius. So I guess maybe you start out with the big ideas, but you need to become more analytical maybe and figure out how do things work, or why do things work, or how, like, maybe you have really big dreams or goals, but you need to, like, having big dreams and goals is good, and you're probably an idealist, and that's good. The Virgo keeps you a little bit practical, though. You are Virgo, so that helps balance that. But the north node Gemini means, like, well, the south node in Sagittarius means you have big dreams, big goals, big ideas. You might not always know how they're going to happen or how to get there. And I think the north node in Gemini is what you're not so good at, but what you could benefit from, which is basically just being more analytical or maybe objective or detached, and seeing the how or the why instead of just the destination, or figuring out how you're gonna get to a certain goal, if that makes sense. Or maybe learn, rather than just having this really big dream, maybe first you need to develop the skills necessary for that dream, or there's some kind of steps that you're missing. There's some kind of steps to get to these big dreams that you want. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Hopefully it does. Yeah, but there's something about how you're very much a big thinker, big dreamer, and that's good, and you can keep that. However, also learn to think small, I guess, if that makes sense, and implement that in your thinking and in your goals. It's also very interesting. You've got South Node by the Rising, which would make you see other people as being better than yourself in some way. So like you might be very humble, especially with Virgo. Sun, Virgo is like this as well, and with Moon conjunct the Descendant. So I'm noticing a pattern in your chart between Sun and Virgo, Moon conjunct Descendant, and South Node conjunct Ascendant. All three of those would suggest that you have a hard time finding your identity, and I think it's hard for you because you're so mutable. You have so much mutable energy, and you're capable of so many different things. It can be hard for you to find constants in yourself. I think I mentioned that in the Virgo Sun Gemini Moon video. To find stability, and stability is key for our identities. And so because you're used to all the change is good too. Change helps the identity, but change comes naturally to you. What doesn't come naturally to you, I think, is more stability, and stability will help you figure out who you are, I guess. But I got a little sidetracked there. Having South Node by your rising, Sun in Virgo, and Moon conjunct the Descendant, you may value other people over yourself. It may be easier for you to admire what other people. Well, my cat just walked across the keyboard. It may be easier for you to admire what other people are doing, or to admire other people, and it's hard for you to find your own way, or to stick with what you're doing and take pride in what you're doing. I would say you're a late bloomer, because your mutable signs start out very naive. So with all the mutable energy and with the emphasis on other people, you may start out as an empath. You may start out at putting other people's emotions above your own. That would be very common with a chart like this, or just being kind of a pushover. I hate to say that because it's kind of rude, but it's not a bad thing. It's just how we all start out with good qualities and other things that are more challenging. It may be hard for you to find your own identity, and to have pride and conviction, and you may be very humble, which is good, but it may take longer for you to learn that pride and that identity, if that makes sense. And again, like I said, making choices that last for years, or just long-term commitments in general, if you can learn, you will learn, though. The way it usually works is like mutable signs, they start out naive, but you have so many different experiences because you're curious, and you're so open to the world that you end up having many, many different kinds of experiences. And from all those different kinds of experiences, you gain lots of experience, you gain wisdom, and from the wisdom you learn who you are, basically. And so with a chart like this, which is so mutable, you may start out very naive, but you typically will become very wise as you mature. So it's just something that takes time, and you'll figure it out. And let's see, you're having your nodal return, so you probably have been figuring a lot of this stuff out recently. Yeah. Okay, what else? Also, just it might be hard for you to expand on what I was just saying. It might be hard for you to be direct with people, because you might be a people pleaser a little bit, or it might be hard for you to disagree with people. But I think you're definitely smart. You've got the Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon, Sagittarius rising, and with that emphasis on learning, I think you're an intelligent person. So you definitely have like strong opinions, but you're also kind of a people pleaser. So that kind of puts you in a difficult situation where it's hard to be diplomatic sometimes. However, speaking of diplomatic, you've got Moon in the seventh house. Again, focuses on other people, so that would kind of make you good at being social, good at being a people pleaser, saying what people want to hear. You also have Mercury and Venus in Libra, so again, that's kind of a theme as well. So you're good at social graces, I would say. Maybe, I don't know. It could go either way with this chart. I could see you as either being really awkward and being introverted, or being a people pleaser and being very social and very diplomatic and good with social mannerisms. Or maybe it's a combination. I'm not totally sure, but with Mercury and Venus in Libra, you'd have a pleasant way of speaking, especially when you were born. Venus and Mercury were both rising in the 11th and 10th houses, so they're in a very prominent position. See, and with Virgo Sun, Gemini Moon, you would have a pleasant way of speaking and an articulate way of speaking. You're probably very articulate, but you are articulate in a way which people can understand, and which is pleasant to hear and easy to understand, I guess. Also with Sun and Mars in the ninth house, there's a lot of stuff I haven't even gotten into yet, but Sun and Mars in the ninth house. Then you've got Mercury in the 10th. So you would almost be, I could see you being a little bit shy. I mean, Gemini moons have a lot that they're thinking about, so they can sometimes be shy. Virgo Sun can sometimes be shy or very humble. However, at the same time, a lot of celebrities will often have planets clustered around their midheaven, planets in the 9th, 10th, and 11th houses. And you have all your personal planets, when you're born, all your personal planets were at the top of the sky. So you've got Sun almost exactly conjunct the midheaven, just 3 degrees away. Mars, pretty close as well. It's 10 degrees away, but it's in the 9th house with the Sun. And then, like I said, Mercury and Venus in the 11th house. So all these very high in the sky. So yeah, like I said, there are indicators in your chart which would suggest someone shy, someone introverted. However, having those planets at the top of the sky like that would suggest that you're very good out in the world. And Sagittarius rising would reinforce this as well. You're good out in the world, or at work or school, or in public in general. You have a way with attention. You handle attention very well. Or being maybe even in front of a crowd to some extent, you would just be naturally good at that. You would have a good reputation, or be able to, like I said, celebrities often have planets like clustered in those areas, or it could be a good place for good thing for politicians to have someone who deals with public relations, or has a public profile. You would naturally have a good public profile because of these planets here. Because Sun and Mars in the ninth house, it's a very public place. It's very outgoing and open to the world. And then Mercury in the 10th is sort of your career. So that would suggest, especially with midheaven and Virgo as well, you probably would have a career. And sorry, I keep interrupting myself, and just saying how your whole chart is so focused on learning, I would suggest you have some kind of intellectual career. So maybe go to university for something, do something involving learning or teaching. Like you could be a professor or something, or a speaker, something with speaking or teaching, or something very academic or intellectual. Because again, you have Virgo midheaven, and then also and Sun close to there. So your identity would be probably linked to your career or to your public image, to whatever it is you do in the world. And then with Mercury in the 10th house as well, your career and your public image are very Mercurian. So it very much has to do with learning. It's intellectual, has to do with learning or teaching. Could be reading or writing, or all that Mercury stuff. It's very definitive of your career. Helping people in some way, you either through information or some kind of communication, or teaching, learning, something like that. And then Venus in the 11th house, that's great too. 11th house is like the world in a way. It's your they say hopes and dreams. So that's kind of vague. It's kind of just how the like what you receive from the world. And with Venus there in Libra in domicile, you would naturally accept like love from the world, if that makes sense, or like accept positive energy, or you'd be very gracious and very maybe charismatic. I don't know if that's the word, but it kind of just adds to this whole theme of you'd be very good in public, very good with receiving attention. Um, yeah, so you're an intellectual, and you're definitely complex. Like there's a lot of nuance in this personality. Again, you have a wide range. You're curious. You're probably humble but smart. You learn a lot. You're always learning and changing and growing. Um, Mars and Virgo. This is just something kind of small, but I've noticed Mars and Virgo gets frustrated if the house isn't clean. So like they need order in their lives. Otherwise, they'll get kind of frustrated. Um, and what else? Yeah, just a combination of, I'm kind of reiterating myself a little bit, but a combination of being shy, but also being very good with people. What else? You've got Saturn in Gemini in the seventh house. So something about socializing or um, friendships or relationships is a really, really big challenge for you. Um, Especially early in life, you might have a hard time relating to people. I mean, Saturn's direct, so you probably have actually most of your planets are direct, all of them except Uranus and Neptune. So you probably can maintain boundaries with others pretty well. But then again, there's all the mutable signs. Mutable signs typically aren't good with having boundaries with people. There's just something difficult about relationships or friendships. Maybe it's hard for you to um I mean, to touch on what I said earlier, maybe it's hard for you to be direct with people. You might be a people pleaser, you might be shy, but also be a people pleaser. So maybe it's hard for you to be genuine or to find. I'm not sure exactly, but there's some kind of issue socially, and it's your major life challenge, sort of. But it's something that wherever Saturn is in our chart, it's something that we get much better with over time. Especially once you approach your Saturn return in your late 20s, you'll um, have a lot of growth in that area. So you might start out life maybe it's hard for you to speak, or I mean you seem like you'd be very articulate, but you seem like you'd be good with people, but there's something challenging you there. There's something difficult about having friendships, or could be romantic relationships. I mean, we all struggle with these things from time to time, but for you it would be a major challenge. Like like the biggest challenge in your life is sort of in that area of it's hard for you to make friends, or it's hard for you to relate to people. Maybe it's hard for you to be direct with people. Maybe it's hard for you to have boundaries with people, something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly. It could just be with communications, or I don't know. And again, it's kind of contradictory because like I said, you seem like you would be articulate, you seem like you would be good with people, but then again, it's almost like there's this big challenge there. And what else? I've read most of what I'm seeing. Jupiter in eighth house, that would suggest like major inheritance at some point in your life, or major debts, but also major inheritances. So that could go kind of either way. Especially in Leo, you might have someone who gives you like really big gifts, but they may be complicated. They may be they may have strings, as they say, or Leo can be a big giver, but also a big taker in a way. So you might Jupiter in eighth house Leo. I could see you either maybe spending a lot and getting a lot of debt, or getting a lot of inheritance from others and getting a lot of money, or both. There's something involving like large sums of money, um, you know, that you're spending or inheriting, or both in your lifetime, with Jupiter in eighth house Leo. You also have Uranus in third house Aquarius. I mean, the outer planets aren't as big a deal, although they are in the first quadrant of your chart. So Neptune in the second Aquarius might make your finances kind of difficult too. It makes finances slippery. I mean, when Neptune's in the second house, it it's kind of tricky for it to be there because it may make it sometimes very easy for you to make money, and it may also make it very easy to lose money sometimes. Money can kind of just come and go, and it's almost like mysterious how it even does that. Like it just, you have a weird relationship with money maybe. However, fortunately you do have Sun, Mars, and Midheaven in Virgo, so you are disciplined and hardworking, and I think that will help balance that. Virgos are, usually good accountants, or they're usually responsible, good with money, stuff like that. So that will help balance those positions a little bit. So you probably are a good person with money. However, there's still some aspect of maybe large sums of money coming and going throughout your life. It could just be circumstances beyond your control. And I don't see it as being really positive or negative. It's just it is a little tricky just because it seems a little bit uncontrollable, but it doesn't seem net positive or net negative. Like it would be you inheriting and losing money, if that makes sense, just at different times in your life. So not something to be too scared about. This is tricky because with ascendant by the south node, you would see others higher than yourself, but with north node conjunct the moon, it's tricky because usually moon by the descendant, you would over empathize with others, so you'd put others before yourself. You'd be very much an empath and feel what others feel, and that leads to a whole bunch of issues because you could easily get tangled in other people's emotions, and like they say that there's no good deed goes unpunished type of thing. So the more you get involved with people and you want to help them and you care about them, you just get tangled in this drama, and it can be bad for you and for them even. And so those are just things that empaths deal with, and you seem like an empath for sure, with multiple indicators in your chart, specifically moon conjunct the descendant. However, you also have moon conjunct the north node, which would suggest you're very emotionally evolved in some way. Moon in Gemini is very analytical, and just being conjunct the north node, you almost come here kind of knowing who you are a little bit just on the inside. You have a lot to figure out on the outside, if that makes sense, in the world and with people and stuff like that. But part of you on the inside is very sure of yourself and already evolved, doesn't have any lessons to learn, if that makes sense. So even though you came here and you have so many physical experiences to have and so much to learn and so many people to meet and so much to happen, I do see this lifetime as being very active. A lot of things happening in this lifetime for you. Although you have so many lessons to learn and so much to do in all those areas, part of you emotionally deep down at your core is already mature and doesn't need to learn lessons, if that makes sense. Or it's just already very evolved. Something like that. I don't know if you relate to that, but and then Lilith and Aries and especially with moon and Gemini. In disaster situations or situations of stress, you would actually be highly functional. So you would keep calm, keep logical, I think, and you'd almost be extra effective, or extra verted. You would just switch on and be very active, and you just do exactly what needs to be done to solve whatever the crisis is. Lilith and Aries, you also have some kind of sexual free spirit energy. I don't know if that's weird to say, but Lilith and Aries very much is the badass, or it's just I suggest look up on YouTube Peace Dealer Lilith and Aries, or Lilith placements in general, but for you have Lilith and Aries. Peace Dealer does really good videos on that. But he describes it as you'd be that super hot person that walks into the bar and everyone's oh damn, look at them type of thing. Go watch it. That would be a good video. But yeah, you do have that part of you, and it's very different than the rest of your chart. You do have a little bit of fire. You've got Sagittarius rising, I guess, and stuff in fire houses, if you want to think about it that way. But most of you is intellectual and easygoing and intellectual, works with others, cooperative, and you look like a very nice person. However, you've got this Lilith in Aries, which is there's a super badass side of you, the super hot person side of you, which maybe isn't always present. Maybe people don't always see it, because again, it doesn't really totally line up with your other placements. So I don't think it would always be super obvious, although it is trining your ascendant. So I would suggest that you are probably very attractive, especially with the Sun conjunct the midheaven and Lilith in Aries trining your rising. You probably do have some kind of aesthetic about you, or maybe it's in your personality where you have a magnetism, or you draw people and you're maybe seductive or something. But at the same time, you're also very intellectual and cooperative, and yeah, especially with Pluto conjunct rising, you'd have that magnetism. Anyway, I think that I'm almost done here. I do see, you've got because you have midheaven in Virgo, you have IC in Pisces. So with Sagittarius rising and Pisces IC, like that would suggest that your childhood was it didn't have any boundaries. So maybe let's see. Let me look at the Sun and Moon too. So the Sun and Moon are squaring, which suggests that your parents were very different. But Saturn's direct, which suggests that your father was present for your upbringing. Like not a lot of people have that actually, so it's pretty common that we don't. And I could be wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong. But Saturn direct suggests that your father was an active part in your upbringing, and that helps you to have boundaries with people and have boundaries with yourself, and to be more disciplined, I guess, if that makes sense. Just because the sort of archetypal role of the father is of more disciplinary nature, I guess, or more strict or structured. Sun represents the father, Moon represents the mother. They're square, so they're very different. You have two parents which maybe they got along, maybe they didn't, but they're very different in nature, and so that could be confusing for you growing up. Also, with Sagittarius rising and Pisces IC, there's a lack of structure in your upbringing, so you may have, like I said, maybe you traveled a lot, or maybe you were allowed to do whatever you wanted, or you had some kind of freedom in some way, or maybe your parents suggested, they praised you for being creative and wanted you to be artsy or creative or passionate or free spirited, something like that. Because again, the Sagittarius rising and the Pisces IC, that would put a focus on traveling. There's like no boundaries there. It's very unstructured, and so that would kind of describe your upbringing, if that makes sense. But in the world, you have Virgo midheaven, so you would be more organized and be attracted to something a little more structured. And Chiron in the first house suggests that you're a very empathetic person. I've seen that in multiple parts of your chart. You also have Chiron in the first house, so you'd be a healer of sorts, especially with all the Virgo stuff. It makes you feel good to help others in some way. You are very much of an empath. You need to have something which can allow you to help others, probably through information or learning, like I said. And that's pretty much the gist of what I see. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if that's accurate, or what you related to and what you didn't. You can feel free to email me or just comment on this video. And hope that helps or gives you some insight. And thank you for watching. Bye.